Hear me now?
Yes.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you. And I wish I could have joined you in person, but it's so great to see that you all were able to gather for this event and that you all got to hear from so many wonderful Virtuoso partners. There's some really great ones in there that I have a long history with. I won't get into those details today, but they're a lot of fun people. And I know hopefully you got to enjoy some of the activities. Seeing you all gathered is really, really amazing. I just did my first international trip this past week, and I went to the World Travel and Tourism Council Summit in Cancun. And it was a group, a conference of 600 people. And I tell you, that was an incredible experience after all this time. So, of course, as you were saying, Cheryl, I want to thank the Virtuoso member agencies who are hosting you: Wallace Pearson Travel, Gerling Travel, Betty McLean Travel, and St. Armands. And kudos to you all. I love that Virtuoso spirit of coming together and doing this and making this collaboration a reality. It's so virtuoso. So I wanted to talk to you today about the current state of travel, what may be happening over the next several months, and most importantly, why you've made the right decision to work with a Virtuoso member agency and the advisors. Particularly now as rules keep evolving, having an advisor is obviously a smart choice, but obviously you know that, or you wouldn't be there. And just, it's interesting. Having represented travel advisors for the vast majority of my adult career, people that really, really captured my heart in my mid-20s because of how incredible they were, what they did for their clients. But every major disruption we've ever had in the travel industry has actually helped this profession. And yet, having served these amazing professionals for so many years and so many decades, I have to tell you, I was still blown away and amazed by how they stepped up during the pandemic and what they did for clients, helping travelers, helping travelers that weren't even their clients just because of the heart they have, who were stranded at the beginning of the pandemic. Amazing things that our partners did as well, and how they worked with our partners, and how they've continued to stay engaged with you on, under something that, nobody could have predicted. I mean, it's funny when I have people in other industries that are friends of mine and trying to make them understand just how tough this became. In March of 2020, travel airline sales went down 30%. In April of 2020, I started, well, actually, it was the beginning of May, literally a year ago, almost right now. I started asking some of my friends, I said, we were down 30% in March. How much further down do you think we were in April? And I had friends of mine who said, another 50%, another whatever. And I told some of my friends, I said, try 130%. And they said, how can you be down more than 100%? And I said, because it's called no business and refunds. So people that own restaurants, yes, they had it tough, whatever, but it was unprecedented. And yet the resiliency, what they did for their clients, how they represented, how they worked with our partners, was unbelievable. So now let's talk about the good part, what's happening now. I want to address the whole concept of pent-up demand, travel demand. And I'm sure you've been reading a lot about it, seeing it on the news. We've obviously been hearing about it from our member agencies and advisors. And we've also been measuring that demand. We've been seeing it. The numbers are quite incredible. Now, I will tell you, it definitely is a little bit right now. Virtuoso has member agencies in 53 countries. My heart goes out to our friends in Canada, where they're still in lockdowns. It very much is a story of feast or famine right now. And, we just did a survey this past week. 1,200 Virtuoso travelers responded, and 80% said they're either currently talking about or actively planning a vacation. And of course, our members all over the US are reporting how busy they are. So what does that pent-up demand mean for you? Well, first of all, one thing that happens is big shifts like this always accelerate trends, right? And one of the things that I think we'd already started seeing is savvy travelers having a more conscious plan with working with their advisors on how to get more out of their life experiences by having more of a conscious plan. I've always said it's interesting that people have wealth advisors, right, to have a conscious plan on how to optimize their financial assets. Why not have that same type of planning and thought process for optimizing your most valuable non-renewable asset, your free leisure time? So anyways, savvy travelers are taking advantage of the more liberal and relaxed booking policies. And being much more proactive in securing your travels, not only for the rest of 2021, but 22 and beyond. And there's some parts of the world where 22 and beyond really are being quite, the demand is very, very strong. You'll hear, I'm sure you heard that from some of our cruise partners as well. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, we're already hearing about, for example, some of the domestic capacity, right? There's some shortages in that, and some of those sold out properties around the country. Our cruise partners will be telling you that some of their products are selling out in a matter of days. So again, collaborate with your advisors on having that kind of a strategy. One of the fun ways that we worked on to dream and plan is a little tool that we call Wanderlist that you can do. It's kind of a fun travel dreaming tool. One of the things that's fun about it is that, for example, if you have an extended family, everybody in the family can actually, you can start a Wanderlist trip to some destination, and then everybody in there chooses kind of the experiences that they're interested in, and it engenders a lot of fun conversation. But the purpose of it is to be able to have even deeper, more meaningful conversations with your advisors about possibilities and things like that. I also wanted to say something that's very, very near and dear to my heart. I was very fortunate. I was born into a travel family. My father was one of the founders of the United States Tour Operator Association. So I have the incredible privilege of having grown up in a travel family. Travel shaped my life and who I am as a person. And sometimes I really lament how our industry doesn't get the respect that I believe it deserves. And I wanted to thank you as active travelers, because your travels make an enormous impact. This pandemic has been the worst catastrophe the industry has ever seen. Never in the history of the planet, not during World War I, World War II, no other time in the history of the planet have all countries that belong to the United Nations during the worst of it, all countries had some form of travel restriction. It has never happened before. Obviously, we know the catastrophe and human toll of lives of those that became ill, but also to the livelihoods of people that were impacted. And no industry was hit worse than travel and tourism. Now, for more than a year, we've been talking about the economic contributions that tourism does to the global economy. We're a member of an organization, as I said earlier, called the World Travel and Tourism Council. It was actually started 30 years ago by Bill Marriott and James Robinson III. And it was basically to try to educate the media, governments, et cetera, about our industry. Now, prior to the pandemic, you may not know this, but travel and tourism, as measured both by direct employment, and this is one of the reasons that sometimes it doesn't get measured so well, because there are two kinds of impacts of travel and tourism. Direct employment, meaning somebody that works for a hotel, a cruise line, an airline, for a Virtuoso member agency. Those are direct employment. The other is the indirect employment, right? The person that puts together the trade show booths, the person that delivers the flowers, the baker, all kinds of people out there. It's absolutely huge. And one of the things that WTTC has done that has helped a lot is the proper aggregation of these different industries, because different financial reporting, different publications, different statistical bureaus around the world would measure travel differently, because they put airlines under transportation, they put something under attractions and things like that. And that's one of the things that WTTC did, is the proper aggregation as well as the measurement of direct and indirect. When you do that properly, prior to the pandemic, travel and tourism was over 10% of the world's GDP, employing over 360 million people. What's also incredible is that for the 4 years running prior to 2020, 1 out of every 4 new jobs created in the world were in travel and tourism. Now, to tell you how bad it was in 2020, the sector lost $4.5 trillion in production and 62 million jobs. So I know that we've all been impacted by COVID in many ways, and we're all ready to start talking about this. But I wanted to share some of those numbers simply to let you know that when you travel, you're not only having great experiences, but you're making a critical difference around the world, supporting local jobs and economies. And so the travel demand is real, its impact is real. But let's talk a little bit about how this time has changed travel. Well, one thing that we're seeing a lot, the people talking about, is that people want to travel with a greater purpose. Now, interestingly enough, not only are people want to travel with a greater purpose, both our industry research and some other statistics, we did a recent poll where Virtuoso travelers said, of course, 94% they'll never take travel for granted again. Now, nothing changes human behavior like having something taken away that we took for granted. I'll also let you know that it's interesting. I was on a panel in Buenos Aires in 2019 talking about over tourism. Little did we know that we would soon be faced with this thing called under tourism, which was a great catastrophe. But I have actually been having some interesting conversations, spoken with the mayor of Amsterdam, spoken with the vice mayor and a group of private enterprises in Florence, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot of places around the world where they're also thinking about, well, what do we want to come back to? And I find it very interesting about their willingness to say, what was the best, but what were the things that we need to fix? So it's also understandable how the traveler is looking at the world in a different way, with an eye to be more sustainable, that supports local economies, but also remembering it's also about the preservation of cultures as well as the planet. Now, we have been committed to advancing sustainable travel for more than a decade. But again, every time somebody uses that word, I think it gets lost because people think it's only about protecting the planet. Yes, but it's much more than that. Again, local economies, job creation, and that natural and cultural heritage. Now, whether you're looking for a family adventure, romantic getaway, or gathering old friends, I just want to assure you that your Virtuoso advisors can craft experiences that can be both luxurious, customized, fun, but also purposeful. And I know that having spent all my life in this industry, being able to see and more and more partners around the world are bringing these stories forward about the things that they're doing that used to be kind of the appendix, now it's becoming more, and it leads to more authenticity, by the way. So anyway, that's something that I'm very passionate about and again, seeing a lot about. But what are some of the other trends? Well, there is one trend that I want to make sure that I want you to avoid, and that is the idea of just always doing last minute booking. Now, it's totally understandable given some of the uncertainty that we've all been facing. But now, in my opinion, you should really be talking to your advisors about having that strategy, thinking about further out on your travel dates so that you're not disappointed when things are sold out, and having that strategy. One of the ways I like to talk about that strategy is, remember when we were all, and I can't remember what grade we were in, right? I think maybe it was a 5th grade science project, but remember a little experiment when our science teacher gave us that jar and there were some rocks, some pebbles, and some sand. And it was one of our first lessons as kids about the lessons of volume. And your teacher said, all of these things fit in that jar, but they have to fit a certain way. And the way it fit was You put in your rocks, then you put in your pebbles, and then you put in your sand. You kind of shook it around. And more, we've been seeing people doing that, right? Talking to your advisors about those big trips, those big milestone trips, those big investments. Then you have that kind of, middle type trips, maybe that you plan out a little bit shorter in. And then the sand are some of those impulse trips, right? That you fill in, like it's almost like going to the grocery store in the end cap when you're on your checkout and buying something because it was there and it was available. You had a strategy. So that's one of the trends that we're seeing accelerate. We're also seeing a trend towards longer stays. I think two things are driving it. Both those that are still in the workforce. I just did a webinar on Monday with the new CEO of Marriott International, Tony Capuano, and he was talking about his daughter going to school at Cornell Hospitality, and how there's this change that after a year of knowing that you truly can work off, and getting rid of the stigma that you can work on the road, that people that are still in the workforce are being able to take longer trips because they will go work in their room somewhere for 3 or 4 hours, but then spend more time with their family or their grandkids or this. And then vice versa, if you're retired and you're not in the workforce, the fact that your family can do that, the fact that school via virtual learning, schools have gotten a really interesting lesson. More and more schools are talking about that. I know the Wallace Pearson family, when they did their girls that went around the world and did that was really cool. And unfortunately, they had to come back, but it's really interesting to see that. The other thing that we're obviously domestic travel. One of the nice things, I guess you could call it, we certainly did discover our own country a lot better. I mean, I myself am guilty of it. I've probably been to Zimbabwe 10 times in my life. And I had not been to South Carolina, where my father was from. So that was a little embarrassing. So it has been great. And of course, we've been able to discover our own country in ways before. And of course, Hawaii, Alaska, California, Massachusetts, Maine, these are all very, very popular. Montana, Wyoming, all these places that have done really, and they did very well even last summer. When I was in Cancun last week, obviously we're looking at Europe very, very closely. The Southern European countries. I had the opportunity to spend some time with the Minister of Tourism of Greece. Very, very interesting. As you may know, the European Parliament has a rotating presidency. And what the Minister of Tourism of Greece had said was that the problem they had is that when Germany held the presidency, they literally would not allow travel and tourism to be on the agenda. When Greece got the presidency, they started putting it on the agenda. And the announcement we had last week about the ability of vaccinated travelers, particularly Americans and British people and all that for certain countries to come visit, was obviously huge news. We're seeing a lot of demand, a lot of people placing bets on there. And what you're starting to see that we're excited about is a coordinated effort to focus on the risk factors of the individual traveler rather than this whole kind of broad, lockdown kind of approach. And that's one of the things that WTTC working on, the ability for digital health passes and things like that, which of course brings me to cruise. And let's talk about that for a little bit. First of all, I've been a very, very vocal person in the press. I think the cruise industry got unbelievably and unfairly maligned when this pandemic broke out. And one of the reasons that they got maligned is because of sensationalist press, but also because they were actually doing something really, really well that unfortunately got used against them. Cruising is the only form of travel that actually measures health perfectly. I don't mean 90%, 80%, I mean perfectly. For years, the cruise industry has always reported, conditions on ships to the CDC. They have medical staff. They have all that, and in the early pandemic area, when there was some confusion, I would propose to you that nobody in the cruise industry did anything that was any different than any government or anybody else. They were trying to catch up with protocols and ways of doing things. And when you look at the work that the cruise industry has done, the way they have brought in experts in science and what they're doing, cruising, in my opinion, will end up being by far already was one of the most convenient, healthy, but it's going to be one of the great, safest forms of travel out there. And despite all that sensationalist press, the reason the cruise industry was able to maintain its financial viability is because cruisers knew better, and they love it. And you look at all the advanced bookings and everything that was there. So as you've seen, demand is off the charts. I know Mark's there. You look at Silver Seas announcing their 2023 World Cruise, and it's sold out literally, in a matter of hours or days. The 139-day voyage was the most successful pre-sale in the company's history. It sold out in a single day, that is. I know Ellen's there. Uniworld did something really interesting, which was this cruise, this mystery cruise, right? And it sold out. I know I think, Ellen, you're working on another one, already put out another one, but that goes to show you the trust and the excitement that these great brands are getting as they put out even something like a mystery cruise and it sells out, because they know that they're going to take such good care of you and take you where you go. So we know that cruises will require proof of vaccination. Some regions around the world, still have some quarantines, and we know that those things are changing. And again, we're all working very hard to do all those things and working as a global network. Now, your Virtuoso advisor is obviously your advocate. Advisors have always added value because of the way they help an individual traveler, look at what they're comfortable with, how to personalize things, how to make it more customizable, how they have your back during the trip, and then obviously when you come back, how they learn from that. They also leverage the Virtuoso Global Network. I'm incredibly proud that this network, we have a wide variety of size of members and all that, but when I started this back when I was 27, I had met these incredible entrepreneurs, as I said earlier, and they had already started an organization in 1950, which was the original organization that we bought and turned into what is now called Virtuoso. And when I met those group of people, how they come together and collaborate. So today, when you talk to your Virtuoso advisors and your agencies in your market, remember that they're also part of this global network. We now have over 20,000 advisors in more than 53 countries. Collectively, we do over $30 billion worth of travel, particularly in the luxury and experiential end. And that means that we share, right? We share knowledge, we share our experiences, we share our buying power, we share the power of the contacts that we know. And that's one of the things that adds to the ability of having that local person that really knows you and understands you, but who's also connected to a global organization that can go head to head with some of the largest travel organizations in the world. We know the COVID battle is not entirely over, but obviously we're seeing hopeful signs every day. This past week, to be very frank with you, it's been, as I'm excited about what's happening here from the US, my heart goes out to our friends in India, and hopefully they'll get some results there. But we are seeing this tremendous movement right direction. As of last week, 1.6 billion people across the globe have been vaccinated. And when I see what's starting to happen in the US and the UK and a couple of other markets, even in Australia, we have very strong members in Australia. The minute we open up New Zealand, literally the New Zealand lodges were literally sold out. Now, part of the reason they were sold out is because they couldn't actually open up at full capacity. And they couldn't open up at full capacity, not because of vaccinations, it's because they didn't have enough employees. A lot of the labor in New Zealand is guest labor. New Zealand is a very small country, as you know, and so they were having a problem because they didn't have seasonal workers. So you can sort of see what's coming here, and I truly believe that when all this, starts to normalize across the world, we could very well be seeing the roaring 20s of travel. So I just want to thank you for traveling, first and foremost, for supporting your Virtuoso members and advisors and helping them support our global Virtuoso partners, both from our major cruise lines to small family-owned businesses. They're all been vetted by our network, so you can be confident, and they're amongst the best in the world at what they do. And in closing, I know that Mark, who's a very dear friend of mine, is going to be coming right after, but I just wanted to thank you, and I wanted to share a little video that we created recently that captures the excitement that I know that you share with all of us at Virtuoso. So thank you, Virtuoso members and the team there. Thank you to all our partners, and thank you all, you Virtuoso travelers, for everything you do. And I wish I could have been there in person, but it's a real honor to have been able to join you virtually. And I hope to see you soon.